Well, if you've ever looked up at the night sky and thought, what was that or what is that? Well, you're not alone. A new report says more than 1,000 UFO sightings were reported in Canada in 2025, right across the country. Sightings made in every province and territory. This is according to the latest edition of the Canadian UFO Survey. Now, the study's lead researcher says the majority turned out to be stars, planes, and satellites. However, roughly 3% were still considered unexplained after analysis. Bright lights, hovering orbs, airborne cylinders, and disc-shaped objects were among the most common things people reported seeing. Let's talk more about this morning. We're bringing in Lee Kun-Lee, the co-host of the Uncover Up Conspiracy podcast. Lee, it's been a few years since we spoke, but I'm glad to chat with you again about this. So again, 97% they're explainable, but the 3% that's unexplained, how significant is that?
Hi, Nick. It's great to be back. And you know what? The last time I was here, we were also talking about UFOs.
Yeah.
So this is fun. You're right. I mean, the 3% is really interesting. That's where all the skeletons are buried, as it were. There are a lot of reports. There's, just as this report said, and this has been backed up with the ERA report that was done in the States a couple of years back. There are a lot of really interesting reports by very serious people. These are airline pilots currently flying. You know, they are watching the skies. They care about what's out there. Now, you're right, though. A lot of them on further investigation turn out to be, you know, they have unfortunately mundane explanations. Then there are those 3%. Now, these could be unexplained for a number of different reasons. I think we should care as citizens, as Canadians, because there is a national security dimension to this. In fact, last time I was here, it was because there were the balloons that were flying over North American territory. What was that? Who was sending them? So the question about what's in your airspace does matter. It's also, though, what if this is like a scientific question that hasn't been answered yet? That's, of course, where a lot of the action is. When we have something like this, we have phenomena that we can't explain. This might be right where it is. So I think that 3% is super interesting. The report itself does say, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean it's aliens, but I think it's definitely worth investigating.
Well, yeah, and it's also interesting, Lee, because, you know, this is the Canadian report, but, you know, south of the border, you know, President Trump has talked about this and, you know, talk about, you know, what else may be going on. That sort of like spurred more people to look up and think more. I wonder how important documentation is on this. I mean, so many people have smartphones now that have video that can capture these things. I mean, rather than just stories being told, to have actual video evidence, how much does that help really narrow down? And in many cases, 97% of the time, it seems kind of actually explain what's happened?
This is a great question, and it is really the crux of the issue, is what is actually the sensor? What is the sensor platform? This is technical jargon. How are we getting this information? So cell phone video footage is super interesting, and stories, as you say, can, you know, help flesh it out a bit. But one of the problems that we have encountered in UFO research is that a lot of the footage that we're getting is created by, say, citizens who are just like, oh my goodness, look at what's in the sky, and then they take a video of it. Or even, you know, the F-18 footage that had, you know, made a real big splash a couple of years ago. These tend to be military sensors, or they tend to be, you know, like my phone camera or something. These are generally not scientific sensors. And the problem is that we then don't have enough contextual data to really understand what's going on. So ERA, which is the All Anomaly Resolution Office, they're basically the ones that deal with UFOs in the States. Sometimes they've been able to really dig down into what the sensor data was saying, and they were able to provide a lot more contextual explanations, which made sense of some stuff that when the rest of us saw it, we were like, well, that's got to be an alien, right? I mean, that's clearly an extraterrestrial. So the problem is not necessarily just having more data. It's the kind of data, and really what we need is we need scientific data.
Right on. Okay, Lee, listen, appreciate this. It's always interesting, and it's always going to be a topic for conversation. Thanks for joining us this morning. That's Lee Kun-Lee, the Uncover Up Conspiracy podcast co-host. Take care. Hopefully we'll chat soon.
I look forward to it.